Hi, everyone. I'm Kerry Carr. I'm over in the Division of Business. And I have sort of ran into a situation, I guess, about 2 years ago, where I was giving a very standardized sort of assignment, right? There's four questions, very sort of easy to navigate, but I found that I was fluctuating greatly in the way that I was scoring my students, right? In that sometimes I might be, sort of swayed by one of the questions more than the others. And I just wasn't doing a very good job of equitable grading. I mean, there's just no other way around it. If you caught me on a Friday morning when I was nice and happy, wonderful. If you caught me on a Friday afternoon when I was tired, that could potentially, right, influence the way that I was doing things. And that was not what I wanted to do. And so what I created is so I have an assignment in my class where students are required to read an article. It is an international business focused article, either from Politico or from the Wall Street Journal or any news outlet that they choose. And then there's four questions that they have to answer, right? And they're very straightforward. Number one, you explain the article. You tell me why you selected that article, the implications of it to the international business, to doing international business, and the other one to the international global community. And what I did was I sort of laid out, based on those five questions, a very simple sort of rubric. And had the three sort of levels of excellent, average, and below average. And then, of course, if it just failed to meet expectations all the way across, that was unacceptable there. But for me, it was really important to be able to get to students exactly what I was looking for, right? And so here, when we talk about, an excellent, it includes an in-depth summary. It quotes part of the author's writing, and it has, something that is the article is about an issue in international business. Um, the differentiation for me then comes, they either have an in-depth summary, but they fail to quote the author, or vice versa. And so for the student, especially when it comes to prompting them and their work, now they can see, the differentiation for them between, what's excellent work, average work, and below average work. And I did that at every level, right? And so for why it was selected, making the business rationale and the personal rationale for which one, making both, for average, or sorry, for above average, no, for average, you make either, and then for below average, you sort of fail to do that business case. And so, kind of copying and pasting quite a bit, quite honestly. The standards were pretty much equal when it came towards what I was looking for them to do. A lot of this, again, tying back to and then laying and being extremely explicit with students as to what it is that I'm looking for. So if you want to score a 5, this is what you want to do. If you want to score a 4, this is what I'm looking for, and a 3, right, this is what you're looking for. Fortunately, what this allows me then to do is, I was then able to take this exact rubric and use it in my leadership course, my business leadership course, where there are also only four questions. And you can see that very similar, right? And so once you've got a sort of foundation for it, it's the same thing. Did you identify the problem? Did you provide the alternatives that I'm looking for? In this case, there are three, right? But again, it sort of gets into, you fully make the business case, you provide both the pros and the cons, and then you also, justify your position from an appropriate theory, right? And so again, this allows students to be able to know exactly what they're looking for. I don't want to take up too much more time, but the last thing is timeliness, right? So did you turn it in on time? Was it 2 to 3 days late? Was it 4 to 6 days late? And then after that, it's just not accepted. I know that Jay will talk about this, but when I first started, one of the issues that I had was I would go through and I would realize that, student did really good work, but they had an average all the way across. And the score that the rubric gave them didn't align with what I thought was fair. And so one of the things that I think he's going to touch on is being able to sort of, make those changes, or being able to add a greater level of depth, right, in order to be able to appropriately, grade students in the work that they do. And so again, didn't really reinvent the wheel in any way, shape, or form when it came to my rubrics. But the big thing for me was I wanted to ensure that students knew exactly what was important, right? Because that's really ultimately that's what it meant to be most transparent.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. And yeah, I think that's, if you're new to rubrics, I mean, this is one of the best reasons. There's two great reasons to use them. For one, it saves you time, right? And I haven't like documented it, but at the same time, if you're working off of a rubric, you're able to grade things so much more quickly than if you're trying to sit there and figure out a grade from scratch each time. This was the big eye opener for me. I learned how to grade coming from English, right? When I started as a teaching assistant, because I was teaching freshman composition, right? So the first thing we learn how to grade is not tests, but I still haven't really learned how to make a test, but we learn how to grade essays, right? And so you've got to have a rubric to grade a good essay, right? And so I learned that early on, and so then I've just been kind of learning how to refine them over the past 15 or so years. I've been doing this, but then having them in Brightspace in particular makes them available to the students in a way that really benefits them, right? And I've even had students this semester, I was really surprised, who asked me kind of, first day of class, I kind of do the thing where, post something to the discussion board, post a question to the discussion board that I haven't answered yet in the syllabus and everything I've had you read. And I had a number of students say the same thing, which is, do you use rubrics and are you going to provide them to us? Which I thought was great because I was like, yeah, of course I am. They're right here. Right? This is where you can always find them. So it's great once they kind of learn that, they really start looking for these things as well. I should have said, yeah, go ahead, Gary.
I'm so sorry to sort of step into it, but kind of on that, he's exactly right in the sense that it takes a little bit to get it and to do it, but the grading just becomes so much easier. And then the other thing too is I spend time when assignments are announced, I'll actually pull up the rubric and say, all right, here's how you're going to be judged, how you're going to be graded in this. And so it sets up a little bit of discussion as to what the expectations are for students. I'm sorry, yep. I just wanted to throw that in there to sort of make sure that people see, yes, it's work at the beginning, but it's so much easier when you go back to grade.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like everything else I think we've learned about Brightspace, right? Or any LMS really. It does often take more effort at the beginning to get it set up, but it pays off long term exponentially. So I should have said to kind of start, if you're really kind of new to rubrics, if you don't really have never kind of dealt with them or used them or been taught with them or anything like that, and you didn't watch that kind of 5-6 minute video that we posted on the sign up page, make sure you take a look at that. It's on our YouTube channel as well, so we can send out that link, because that really just kind of goes into the basics of here's kind of some of the terminology you'll hear. Mostly what you're seeing from Carrie, you've seen from Carrie and you'll see from me, are analytic rubrics, which means they're broken down very specifically into rows and columns, right, in terms of criteria and standards, right? You also sometimes hear about holistic rubrics, which are just kind of bundle everything together. So instead of having a whole bunch of rows that differentiate quality of writing, timeliness, and things like that, it's just kind of bundled together into one kind of, this is really good, A, B, C, D kind of thing, right? So some people prefer the holistic. I think both Carrie and I, from our demos, obviously prefer the analytic, right? So what I was going to show you, and again, Carrie's shown you kind of the basics of what these can look like, and also that portability, which is also great, because if you start to develop these, not only are you using them from one semester to the next when you're teaching the same class, but you can find ways that they fit or adapt pretty easily between classes as well, right? Which is really handy. So I'm going to go ahead and actually show you what it's like to actually use one of these to grade with, or actually a couple of these to grade with, so you can get an even better sense of this. And then we'll actually then see also what it looks like for the students coming out of this as well. And I think, of course, I left my email open, so let me switch over here. So this is a master course shell that I was working with, right? And I've got a couple of fake student accounts in here that let me kind of do some of this. The view as student option works for some things, but I think as many of you have found, getting into the really kind of nuts and bolts, it's not a true experience, right? So I've got these kind of fake student accounts. So I had one of my fake student accounts come in and submit a paper for this weekly learning reflection that I do, right? So I come to the assignments page and I can see I've got one new submission. So I go ahead and click on that. And again, if you've done any grading in Brightspace, you kind of know this routine, right? So here's the assignment, right? I click on it to see what they did. I think this was a script from a video that I did for the students. And over here in the grading thing, right, since I've got this hooked up with my rubric, right, this is the main thing I see right here, right? And so when I want to go ahead and start grading this, I'm just going to click on this. And I've got that's probably not showing you that pop-up. Let me change my sharing real quickly here to my full desktop. Okay, and so now when I click on this, you're probably going to see the pop-up window, right? Which then shows me the actual rubric. Okay, but the nice thing about this is it's not just the rubric, it's an interactive part of the rubric, right? So I can go through now that I've read the student's paper and you can see how I broke this down. I said the two main things I'm looking for with this paper are the student's level of engagement with the question, right? And the quality of the writing, right? And again, as an analytic rubric, I've broken down those criteria and I've just got 3 standards, right? What I call mastery, proficiency, and lacking. And then as you saw with Carrie's, again, the descriptions as well, right? So I read through this and I think the student is meeting that level of proficiency. They're doing a pretty good job of trying to better understand things, right? As you saw in Carrie's rubric, he was looking at it from the teacher point of view, right? So you could see both the standard that the student's always going to see, right? But then you also see this because you can have pre-written feedback for each kind of piece of the puzzle. And I think this is one of the most useful things. Again, it takes a little more setup to begin with, right? But this is pre-written feedback that you're giving the students about the specific aspect of their work. And you're saying, hey, you're doing a pretty good job engaging with this topic, but you need to push yourself a little more if you want to get that full points, right? Or over here, if I gave them lacking, it says, you need to come see me about this, right? And so this, once I started using this, I really loved, I used to leave these blank because I was like, I don't want to fill anything else out. But again, like Carrie said, once you do it up front, you save yourself a whole lot of time with these. So I'm going to say, okay, now the student does a great job with the writing though, right? Really nice work, thanks, right? So you can see I'm just selecting these and Brightspace is kind of keeping track of the score here. Janice is going to show you how to do these split level criteria to cluster kind of what they call criteria groups, right? Because you can have different levels of points for these things, right? So I'm not going to give students full points, the same amount of points for turning in something on time as I do for really high quality writing, right? But I still want to reward them for turning it in on time. So I do that. Now you notice I don't have any feedback here, right? Because I don't think they need any more feedback, right? They turned it in on time. They know they turned it in on time. And they met the basic word count because these are freshman level reflections. And I need to have that kind of built into the assignments. Otherwise I get 20 word responses. And then I click on close and it populates the score for me, right? Now I will say one thing we were just talking about this beforehand. It used to put that feedback into the feedback box here. And I think for whatever reason, they took that away last fall, which I'm a little disappointed by, but I can still give the students some written feedback. If I want, as I've done in the past, I can do some video feedback. We've talked about doing that as well, or I can upload a file. Again, the same things you can do for any kind of assignment. And then I'm going to click on publish. Yep. And I'm good to go to the next one. So let me switch over here real quickly and show you what it looks like from the student side of things, right? And let me go ahead and refresh this. All right, so now the student comes here and it's going to get a little notification once it comes through, and it says, you submitted this assignment, and here's your feedback, here's your score, right? And now here's your feedback, right? I click on this. And again, this is what the student sees. And again, this was all pre-populated. I didn't actually have to write anything new for this. They see what they got, they see why they got it, and they get the feedback from me, which kind of says, here's what you need to do going forward to improve on this, right? Like I said, these are repeated, these are weekly or bi-weekly reflections. And so I really want them to improve over the course of the semester. So my feedback really kind of focuses on, hey, here's what you should do going forward to improve this. Right? They can see the score, and then they see what Brightspace calls the overall score, right, as well. And then if I had done any written feedback, it would be down here as well. So like I said, you can see how quickly that works. You can see how easy it is too. It's just clicking, right? And if you want to, as you're grading these things, change things, you can tweak the score a little bit. You can tweak the feedback, right? You can if you want to, but you don't have to, right? And so I think that's one of the really kind of the big benefits of doing this is having that kind of built-in feedback for the students, right? Like Gary said, it saves us time. It tells them ahead of time what they need to do well on this assignment. But then I think ultimately, more importantly, it gives them not just a grade about how they did, but specific direct feedback about how they did overall, but also where they were strong and where they were struggling with that assignment. And like I said, the way I've got it written, what they need to do better next time around. So that is mostly mine. I was just going to show you real quickly, because that's a pretty small, straightforward. It's a reflection, so it's a pretty small one. You can get as complex as you want with these. Elizabeth will warn you against getting too complex, right? And the students kind of also get a little overwhelmed. My essay rubrics used to be kind of massive. I got maybe a little too analytical with them. But I am doing it this semester with doing a Wikipedia assignment. And so I'm actually using their provided rubric, which is also pretty big. But I just wanted to give you kind of a look and see what that's like too. Right? So you can see it's much more extensive, right? But again, this is for a semester-long project where they're researching and writing a Wikipedia article that will potentially go live on Wikipedia by the end of the semester. So I do want to make sure they're doing a pretty good job. And you can see how specific this rubric gets.
Hey, Jay, you've got a question in the chat here.
Sure.
So from first of all, we can see your desktop too with like your stickies. So I'm just putting that out there. Anybody who wants to join our book club, we're still can take some people for about one more day.
There we go.
Ashley asked, she uses the assignment grader by D2L. So can these also be graded in that app?
On the iPad?
Ashley, yes. Is that what you mean on your iPad?
The iPad app?
Unmute now and ask your question.
Yes, that's exactly what I mean.
Yes, you can, and I used to really love that, although, and I think I'll defer to Janice on this, I think they kind of killed off that app. Is that right, Janice?
Yes, they announced the end of life, so anybody that has the app on their device are good. Anybody who wants to download it will not find it in the App Store.
So it still works, but it's never going to update or be downloadable again. Is that right? Okay. Yeah. And I think they're probably moving their web interface to kind of get rid of that. I really like that. I used to do that when I would, back in the days when I would travel for a conference, I would download a whole stack of papers on my iPad. I'd get on the plane and I'd sit there with the stylus and again, you could use the rubrics. It's actually even a little bit easier because it's not doing multiple windows. It just kind of pops it up on the side as a column, and you can plug it in there and do all the same stuff. You can add feedback, change feedback, whatever.
And Alam had a question too about the screen. Alam, could you not see his screen when he was sharing?
It was my fault. I can see everything now.
Okay. Okay, good.
Thank you.
We just want to be sure we got you covered.
Okay, and so that was a real quick overview. One thing, as Carrie mentioned, I will just kind of bring back before I hand it over to Janice. So let me switch back over here. One thing that took me, a while to get used to I think I'm in the wrong screen here, for grading with a rubric is to really think about those scores and the numbers, right? And I used to do, like I said, I used to have a rubric that had, like, for the paper, it was like 5 columns, kind of like Carrie's, but then I also had a ton of criteria, and it was too much, right? And so I had to start consolidating those things. And so now I usually have about maybe 3 columns, right, with the different levels that they can get. And usually somewhere along the lines of mastery, proficiency, you're getting there or you're struggling, right? But you have to spend some time thinking about the numbers, not just in terms of what the final score is going to be, but how it kind of balances out, right? And so what I do for that, again, if you're kind of new to rubrics, and if you're not new to rubrics, you already know this, right? But you just got to kind of imagine and say, okay, in this rubric, if this student gets everything right, of course, I'm looking at the big Wikipedia one, it's going to be, 3 points, 6 points, 9 points, let's say, for that, right? And so they could get 9 out of 9 points on that. That's 100%. And if I come over here.
So we don't see, Jay, sorry about that. We don't see your rubric. We just see we didn't see the pop-up.
Yep, no problem. Sorry, that let me pull up another one real quickly here. But the main point is you need to kind of take a look at each of those columns and figure out the points and kind of add them up, and then do a little bit of math to figure out, okay, if a student were to get, obviously if they get all in the mastery column for mine, it's going to come out to 100%. But in that 3-column one that I was showing you earlier, if they get everything straight down the middle, and it's 2, 4, 6 out of 9 points, then what does that equal out to, right? And I'm not going to rush and do the math here. And if they get only 2 points over here, or 3 points, so you have to kind of figure out the math and kind of say, okay, if the student does proficient level work, are they getting essentially a B or a C or what, right? And I really kind of surprised myself when I finally looked at this a few years ago and realized that I had been kind of unbalancing students, but it explained why I so often ended up kind of tweaking the grade at the end there, because I'd do it with the rubric and then I'd say, that's not quite right? And so then I'd have to tweak it a little bit. And what I ultimately found is I just needed to spend more time at the beginning thinking about that point scale, right? And so sometimes my rubrics will have like weird decimals, and the students are like, why is this worth 2.5%, 2.5 points or 1.25 points? And I just kind of explained to them, when you add it up, it works out, right? And that's that. I'm just trying to make it, again, as equitable as possible, right? But it's really easy to kind of say, well, 3, 2, 1, yeah, but if you don't stop and think about it quite, it's really easy to kind of throw off the grade scale. Okay, and I think with that, I'm going to hand it over to Janice, who now is going to kind of step you through the process of actually creating one of these in Brightspace, so you can see kind of what you need to do to put all this together.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, great. I will share my screen. You all seeing my screen? Okay, great. I thought I'd start out here showing you a rubric that I worked with Sister Juliana on. She was trying to develop. She had students doing concert reports, and they were handing them in on paper. And she wanted to be able to have the students submit those through Brightspace and be able to grade them. And so from the instructions that she had written up in terms of what the students had to submit to get the 20 points for that grade, we were able to come up with this rubric. And so, like I said, each concert report was worth 20 points. The students had to do 5 reports for the semester, and with 60 students, that's a lot of reports to grade. And just like Jay was talking about in terms of the distribution of points, really, she didn't want them every criteria to be worth the same points, because some stuff was weighted more heavily. And so we came up with this. And to get this into Brightspace, when you're in Brightspace and you want to get to the rubrics tool, it is in Course Admin. So from Course Admin, you will find the rubrics tool under Assessment. So to create a new rubric, of course, you would click on this blue New Rubric button. I'm not going to create a new one right now. What I want to do is look at one that I've already created, and we're going to look at this one. So if I edit this and then show you how we took the information from that rubric that you just saw and put it into Brightspace. First thing I want to mention, though, when you're in the rubric tool, if what you're seeing does not look like this, it is probably because you're not using the new rubric creation experience. So up at the top of the page, there's this little down arrow. When you click on it, you can turn on the new rubric creation experience. I wouldn't suggest turning it off, because it is actually easier to create a rubric in the new experience. And so, as you know, anyway.
Hey, Janice, but before you move on from that, may I ask a question?
Yes.
If one happened to have turned it off to begin with, and now would like to turn it on for the easier experience, how would one turn it on once it's been turned off?
Yeah, when you enter the rubric tool, just look for this down arrow here.
Okay.
And then when you expand this section, you'll be able to turn it on.
Thank you.
So you can turn it on and off from here. Yes.
Asking for a friend. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Hopefully you're all right. As I was saying, anywhere in Brightspace where something is required, you'll see there's an asterisk. So of course we have to have a name for this rubric. And over here on the right-hand side is the status. And so there, a rubric can either be in draft mode, it can be published, or it can be archived. This one is a draft because we're working on it. You indicate the type of rubric, and as Jay mentioned, you can have holistic or analytic, and this rubric happens to be an analytic rubric. You indicate the scoring method that you're using. Points, no score points or custom points. So if you use points, then basically all your criteria and your levels will have the same amount of max points. If you choose custom points, then you can split it out like you saw with Sister Juliana's rubric, where the content and information was worth more than, say, the timeliness. So we have set this up as a custom. And then this will let you quickly reverse your level, the order of your levels. So we actually have 3 levels here: meets expectation, needs improvements, and inadequate. And then our criteria along this side. So if I needed another level, then I could click on the plus on either end to add that level in. And so basically at this point, it's just a matter of filling things out. So criteria 1 was timeliness. She decided that the maximum points the students could get for that would be 2 points. So they would get the full 2 points if they met the expectation. And then here's a description of what this level and criteria means. And then that initial feedback that you saw Jay pointing out, when you do the click and score, if you click in this box when you're doing the click and score, then this initial feedback will get populated in there. And by the way, you can always add edit that initial feedback. So if you wanted to add more, take something out, adjust it, you can always do that when you're doing the click and score. And so basically, it's a matter of just going ahead and filling all of this information out for the levels and the criteria. And for the ease of grading, the initial feedback really is a time saver, and it helps the students. If I needed to add another criteria, I could click this button here and add another criteria. I see the total points down here, and the total points for this is 20. I'm going to skip over this add criteria group for a moment. So here's the overall score, and this is something that you have to set up. You have to decide. So when you're adding your levels and your criterias, then you're going to come back to your overall score, and you determine what that overall score is going to be. So for meets expectations, 18 out of 20 is about 90%. So that would meet expectations. Needs improvements is somewhere between 11, but less than 18. And then inadequate would be anything less than 11, right? There's also options here. So if we expand this section, you see that you have the option to determine the rubric visibility. For transparency, the students should probably see the rubric. But if for some reason you don't want them to, you can actually hide the rubric. You can hide it until feedback is published. And you can also hide the scores. There's a option here to add a description, and this is helpful as you're building your rubrics and copying them between courses and sharing them. Being descriptive here may help later on if you're reusing rubrics. Then in availability, allow new associations and competencies in ePortfolio. You're going to see competencies stated throughout Brightspace. However, we don't have that component in our Brightspace system. So checking this box or having it unchecked is going to have no effect on that particular module. We do have the ePortfolio, but a lot of faculty are not using Brightspace's ePortfolio. So you can, check that or not. The criteria group. So let's say I've got these 4 criteria and levels, but I want to add more, another group of them. So I can add this, click on the add criteria group. And so let's say this, instead of having 3 levels, this had 4. I can just quickly add another level, and then I can change the names if necessary, indicate how many points it's worth. So let's say the max points here was going to be 10. And then 8 is fine. This is just an example. So it tells me over here that the total, or the maximum number of points for this criteria would be 10. Notice my total points has changed. So the system recognizes now that there's a maximum points of 30 here. But notice what didn't change, the overall score. It doesn't update. You actually have to look at your overall score and make sure that that is reflective of what you want. So in this case here, meets expectations, maybe could be a 27, needs improvements, maybe that's a 20, I don't know, and inadequate. So like I said, just be aware that in the overall score section, it's not going to update automatically. You have to tell it what you want. And notice also there is no save button, because what's happening is that the information is being saved automatically as you work. So you don't have to save. And then here's just a matter of closing. Now, if this particular rubric, if I wanted to attach it, associate it with an activity or something, then it would have to be in a published status. So the status would have to be published. This one is a draft. But what I will do is take you to the assignments folder. Actually, before I go there, those of you who are using rubrics in Brightspace may recall, in Blackboard, may recall that you could set up rubrics based on a point range. In Brightspace, you actually don't have that, but you can accomplish that. This is one way to do that. So let's say we had this presentation rubric, and we had these levels, and an excellent, you were wanting to award the students maybe between 9 and 10 points, good 7 and 8, 5, 6. You get the point. So as you're grading it, you may decide, well, this is more than good, but it's not quite excellent. So I just want to give them 9 points. You can do that. And that rubric, oral presentation rubric, if we look at this, I'll edit this one. So here I basically took what I had in that example, and for the level, I just included the fact that this is going to be between 9 and 10 points. So when you're actually grading and you do the click and score, if I were to click in this box, Brightspace is going to default to the 10 points, but you always have the opportunity to edit this and change it. So for any of these, like I said, so this would be one way to set it up so that you could do a point range. So hopefully I didn't confuse you all too much. All right. And then to associate this with an activity or assignment in Brightspace, I'm going to show you the assignment submission folders. All right. So again, following along with this example for Sister Juliana, she had the 5 possible concert reports. And so if I edit this assignment, and this is looking at it through the new assignment creation experience. So if you go to assignments and it doesn't look like this, it's because you're using the old experience, and not all features are available in the new experience. So likewise here with this down arrow, if you wanted to turn on or off the new assignment creation experience, you could do that. But here in the evaluation and feedback section, notice it says that there's one rubric added here. And so to add a rubric to an assignment, for example, I would just be coming here to this section and say add rubric. It would be an existing rubric. So I click on add existing and then just choose the rubric. This concert report rubric is already attached. And so here when you saw Jay doing the grading, his rubric was attached and he could just do the click and score. And so here, the system is telling me that there are 2 new submissions. So if I view those, I can see that I have 2 demo students who submitted something. And so Sister Juliana allowed the students or wanted them to include their ticket or their program, and along with their report. Sometimes students would submit it in multiple files, sometimes just in one file. So if you were looking at this one with the multiple files, waiting for Brightspace for grading, open it up. see that. Oh, yeah, there's a ticket. Go back to user submissions. There was a program, and it was signed by the performer. And the actual report, when you read through the report, and of course, you know, with the assignments, you can use these annotation tools, right? So when you're ready, then you can grade. You click on the rubric to grade. And it was submitted on time with that default, that initial feedback. And like I said, you can add additional information. Maybe grammar and mechanics wasn't right, but there was a ticket in the program. And you included all of that. So you get 19 out of 20. The overall score meets expectations. When you close, then that 19 out of 20 returns here. And as Jay mentioned, you can also add some overall feedback. And when you're ready, you can publish. If you're grading multiple students' papers and you want to hold off on publishing the grade because you want to review everybody's work, then you can just save all of the evaluation and feedback as a draft, and then you can go back after the fact and publish everybody's scores at one time. I'll just do publish here. So my demo student will get a message. All right. Okay. And when you have your rubrics, you can actually look at the statistics, because I'm playing around with this in a sandbox course. My stats really don't mean anything. But if you want to see the rubric statistics, you can actually see that I went to course admin and then the rubrics tool. And so if I wanted to look at the rubric stats, I click on the arrow and then I can view statistics. And I think I have some stats here under, okay. Well, like I said, means very little. I've assessed 2 here. So if I look at this, I can see overall, or I can look at the stats for the criteria. So you can get some rubric stats. So like I said,
you had a...
I have a question.
Yeah, you got a question in the chat from Cheryl. Says, can you show how the steps the students must take to view a copy of the rubric prior to submitting the assignment?
Yes. Let's see. Okay. So what I'm going to do.
Well, Janice is thinking, sorry, I missed that question, Cheryl. Well, Janice is thinking and getting ready to show that question. Cheryl, what I always do is I have the rubric as part of the assignment itself. So like I'll have the instructions and the assignment like as part of the PDF or part of the instructions. I actually include the rubric there, not, and then I create it in Brightspace. And so I actually show it to them. I think Carrie said he did this as well. I always show it to them as I'm introducing the assignment. So when I say here's going to be oral presentation number 1, I show them all the task, the learning objectives, the task, guidelines, and then here's the evaluation guidelines. Here's how you're going to be doing it. So they don't. You could also do that through Brightspace, but I always show it to him as I'm introducing the actual assignment. Thank you, Janice.
Right. Okay, and so here I'm actually in as this demo student, and I've gone to the assignment submission folder. And so when the student sees the information about the assignment, the rubric is a part of that information that they will see. So they can see that here, even before they get to the point where they have to actually submit the assignment. And you can also include your rubric in the content area by using a quick link. I actually don't have an example of that, but
I do if you want to show.
Oh yeah. Okay, let me stop sharing and Jay will show you.
Because I just discovered it this semester. So
yeah, I was just thinking that sounds pretty cool. And then Ashley, I see your question. We'll get to that one next.
So let me share mine real quick. Google Chrome. Okay, so this is my X-Core class this semester. So over in the content section, trying to organize things as much as possible. And I tried to get away from having like downloads and documents, and so everything's kind of built in here. So again, here's this self-assess, or that's not a good one. Here's the learning reflection. Again, we already saw that, right? So here's the page I set up to describe the assignment, right? And normally, if I were printing this out and did this as like a document in the PDF, I'd have a table with the rubric there. And obviously, what I found is that copying and pasting, I would screw things up. So again, I was really happy to learn that now all I needed to do was set up a link. So now the students can see this page and they can click on view the learning rubric. And it just opens up as a separate document that they can take a look at any time, so they can still see it before they submit the assignment, but they also have kind of full access to it ahead of time as well.
And you just did it with as add, so you just
I just did
highlighted those words and add a quick link.
Yep, I can show you real quick. It's just so if you wanted to add the rubric here, let's say, right, just highlight it, click on the link, and you just scroll down, and there's your rubrics. And there's all your published rubrics, and there you go.
Thanks.
Cool.
Yeah. So like I said, I had a horrible habit of miscopying and mistranslating, or I'd change it in Wikipedia and I'd forget to change it on the assignment sheet. So anything I can do to cut down on those kind of mistakes is good for me. So.
Oh, I like that. I like that because that flows with how I've been setting up my content section. So it's good.
Cheryl, thank you for that question, because that really helps me too, because I would always cut and paste it into PD and then PDF it. And yeah, you make one little change and now you have to do that. So
yes.
I like
Janice, Ashley also asked, in College of Pharmacy, they have the Team Talk courses, where multiple graders are grading using a single rubric. So like let's say, so this week I'm grading the reading guide, next week Jay's grading the reading guide, next week Ashley's grading the reading guide. Is there a way to see who graded the activity if we're using a single rubric? I'm thinking not, but I'm asking you.
I don't know. The history may tell you something, but that I'd have to actually play around with that. Off the top of my head, I don't know.
Ashley, I'll cut and paste this question and email it to Janice, and then we'll do a little play on that one.
I don't think you can.
But I don't think you can either.
Yeah, I've taught a team taught course, and that's one thing we did kind of lose a little bit switching from Blackboard, because they had, I think, a better kind of system for team grading. And so now it's just kind of whoever gets there first, but you can see that it's done, but I don't think you can see who did it.
All right, and I had just a little bit more information to try to present. So just remember, you get to the Rubrics tool, Course Admin, and Rubrics. When you want to create a new rubric, you're looking for the blue New Rubric button. If you want to associate a rubric with an assessment item, then you'd be looking for this section here where you just add a rubric. If you have already created the rubric, then you would select that rubric. And notice you can create a rubric in a new window. However, I think that's going to be probably the harder way to do it because it may take some time to create that rubric. You can also, if you have multiple rubrics, you can choose which one is going to be the default scoring rubric. And some best practices. You can attach rubrics to assignments, discussions, as well as to grade items in your gradebook. If you've attached the rubric to an assignment, then that's where you're going to be assessing, using that rubric to assess. Same with discussions. You attach it to the discussion and you assess from there. When the situation where you would want to attach it to a grade item is for an activity that's not associated with any course tool, so it's not associated anywhere else in Brightspace, and then you would assess it from there. Some effective practices. We already talked about initial feedback. This is, in fact, a time saver for grading. The assignments tool has a submission type of observed in person. So for those activities that is not, the students aren't submitting something to you inside of Brightspace, you can set up an assignment and choose the submission type observed in person, associate a rubric with it, and then grade it from there. So you do have that option. If you want to copy a rubric between courses, then you can use the import, export, and copy components tool. And some potential pitfalls. Do not attach your rubric to the course tool and to its associated grade item. If you do, you will get some unexpected results. Pitfall number 2. If a rubric is in a draft status, it can't be associated with the course item. So you have to publish the rubric first. Number 3, you can't edit a rubric that is currently in use, but you can make a copy of it, and then you can edit that copy. Also, if you need to change the rubric type or scoring method, just be careful when you do that, because switching between those could result in loss of information.
Janice, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you while you're taking a breath. Will you back up a couple and elaborate on the new Observe in Person feature? Cheryl and Elizabeth ask. Thank you.
When you are creating an assignment submission folder, most times the students will have to actually submit something to that assignment submission folder. Well, there's an observed in-person submission type that you can use. In other words, the student is not going to be submitting anything. You're observing something that they're going to be graded on in person. And so when you create that type of assignment, the system is aware that there's not going to be a file or anything, a document or whatever uploaded for that. And I'm going to drop a link in the chat to a recent Cat Food blog post. You are following us on Cat Food, right?
Of course.
This has more information about how that works and what you can do. And the benefit of setting that up is if you didn't, then you'd have to associate the rubric to a grade item in your grade book.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say, Cheryl, when I teach research methods, they have an oral presentation of their results. And before, because they don't have to submit anything for it, it's all oral. So before, what I would actually do is I would print out the rubric, I'd do the rubrics by hand, then I'd enter the grade in the grade book, then I would give them the rubric. I would post a PDF of the rubric. And so now, because there was no place for me to kind of click the evaluate button, but now with this new feature, I can create it as an observed in person, and now I can just attach the rubric and use it like I would if it was a paper.
Yes, that's exactly what that type is designed for.
That's cool. That's cool.
All right, and so a rubric grading tip. You're not boxed in by it. As you saw, you can actually override whatever score as needed. And students can see their completed full rubric in the assignments tool, if you have it attached there, in the discussions tool, as well as in grades. But remember, rubric visibility has to be enabled. In other words, the rubric can't be hidden from the students in order for them to be able to see it. And then there, we've already talked about quick link, right? Okay. I do want to point out that the rubrics, Brightspace rubrics, are not the same as the rubrics that are available through Turnitin. There are actually two different types of rubrics, but Turnitin actually has rubrics, and so if you're using Turnitin, just be aware that they're different. All right, and then I had this check-in. So where are you all? Hopefully everybody's somewhere. Hopefully everybody's on. I'm good to go.
Does everybody know how to use the annotation tool in Zoom? Should be able to get to it on your.
Right.
I've seen it, but I haven't been adventurous enough.
Yeah, remind us.
So where you see it says, I am sharing my screen, it says view options or something.
Mm-hmm.
If you roll up there, you should see, and yeah, somebody's found it. You should see an option for annotation, and then you can, all right. Yes. Okay.
That's me. It's okay. Okay.
Now, for how I'm feeling this week, it's more like, But for rubrics,
stop.
right.
Okay, somebody says, stop, I need help.
That was me.
Okay. All right.
I'm just saying for my week.
Oh, okay.
For rubrics, I'm good. I'll erase.
All right. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to clear the drawings, and because we're a little over time. Thank you guys for. All right. Oh,
I have
my
one
mouse back.
additional question, Ms. Janice.
Yes.
Can the rubrics be used to grade assignments or activities other than something that's written? So if I wanted my students to record a quick video or something like that, am I able to tie that to the rubric as well to assess a skill?
Yes. So if you set up an assignment, for example, and the students had to create a video, I don't know if they, put it on YouTube, whatever, then you can set the assignment up and associate the rubric with it and then assess them from there.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, and I'm sure between Jay and Carrie and I, we've got some examples of that if you want to back channel and see some examples of that. I had my students last semester do videos, and I just set it up as an assignment, and then they just posted the video link.
All right. And then interested in what you think your major challenge for using Brightspace rubrics in your courses might be. So if you have an answer for that, go go ahead and type it in the chat. All right, coming up with the correct balance of points for the overall grade. Yeah, that is a challenge. And as I have heard some of you share before, that sometimes it's a process looking at it, and then over semesters looking at the rubric and then reassessing. Is that correct, Elizabeth?
Yes.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to make the score match, but overall it's okay. Same kind of idea. Getting all the instructors to agree on rubric components. Well, okay. Same with me, the balance of points. And be intentional with setting up the rubric. Earlier, I had dropped a link to tips for keeping rubrics clear, fair, and efficient. And so there may be some ideas there. All right. And so, do we have any other questions here? We're a little over time.
We're good to go.
All right. And you will be getting a workshop evaluation. Be looking for that in your email. We really do value your the feedback that you all give us. And your attendance in today's workshop will earn you the rubrics badge. So you can look for that in the Learn Everywhere Azula course. And I would think that you should see that within 24 to 48 hours.
It's actually already there.
Oh, they already, oh.
They already got it.
He's fast. Well, let me give you some confetti. All right. I'm going to stop my sharing.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much to Janice and Jay and Carrie for this informative session. I really learned some cool stuff. So thanks, y'all.